I have been in contact with different types of ET beings. I've actually had them in my home. I have a backyard camera, security camera, and a front yard security camera. And I've caught things moving through the walls and moving around the backyard and coming back towards the house.
For more than 7 decades, one man has stood at the edge of the phenomenon, watching, documenting, and at times directly engaging with something humanity still refuses to understand. From childhood sightings that defy explanation to coordinated contact events witnessed by entire groups, to a 6-volume investigation so comprehensive that NASA reportedly took notice. Terry Tibando has spent his life asking a question most governments won't touch. What happens when the intelligence behind UFOs decides to respond? Tonight, we sit down with one of Canada's most persistent voices in UFO research, a man who has seen the phenomenon evolve, adapt, and reveal itself across generations. This is the Agenda Podcast UK, and tonight's guest is Terry Tibando. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, I guess, in Britain. Thank you for having me on your program. It's a pleasure. It's a chance to reach out to another country and let them know what's going on in North America and in my personal life as well.
Thank you, Terry. It's really good to have you on. I appreciate you doing this for us. I think you've got a wealth of information that would be so interesting and helpful to our viewers. So I'd like to just start, if we can, about what happened in your childhood. You've spoken about sightings going back to your childhood. Which early experience really shaped your understanding of ETI the most, and why?
Well, my father was in the Royal Canadian Air Force, and during the Second World War, he was in the Army as a motorcycle dispatcher. And he came back to Canada, and I think he decided he wanted to stay in the military, but he didn't want to stay in the Army. He wanted to move into the Air Force. And we had moved from Victoria, where I was born, to North Bay, Ontario, and then from North Bay, Ontario to St. Jean's, Quebec, which was a small military RCF base. And back in 1953, I was 5 years old then, so I'm dating myself. And I'm a twin. My twin and I are fraternal twins, so we don't look alike, but there's similarities. And it's like that movie Twins with Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
I'll let you know who the other Schwarzenegger is. And anyways, we were living in what they call a parent mariquota base home. And I remember, and I'm going to lead up to how this all unfolded, because during the Second World War, Germany made a lot of advances and bragged about it and said we'll win the war in a couple of months or something like that. And what happened is, after the war, the Allies won, and they captured a lot of scientists and technology and gold and monuments and all kinds of stuff that the Germans had taken from various people. And one of the things that was brought over to Canada via Britain and then to Canada was a Messerschmitt 163E Comet rocket plane. And it just happened to be on this base. Now, we had just moved there, and my father was meeting up with various servicemen, and they had a weekend to get together and just relax and play baseball. So he said to us, my brother and I, do you want to come and watch this baseball game? And we said, yeah, there's nothing else to do here. So we went down. It turned out we were the only ones watching the game. There was nobody else. And we got bored very quickly.
Yeah.
So we're looking around to see what we could do. And we spotted this plane on the tarmac. So we took off, and my dad didn't miss us. He was too busy playing baseball. And we went over to this plane. And if you've seen a picture of a Messerschmitt, it has a single wing, tiny little propeller on the front end, large wheels, and a tail. And it had a swastika and the iron cross on it, and it was camouflage painting. And we were running our hands all over this thing and just totally intrigued by it. And we found that the canopy was open. So we opened up the canopy, and we took turns getting into the pilot seat and playing with the joystick and whatever else is there. Now, it wasn't going to go anywhere because I think it ran on paraffin fuel or something that was highly volatile.
Yeah.
And so it had no fuel on it, but it had a nozzle on the back end. And if you know anything about this particular plane, it would have a very short takeoff and go straight up and climb. And what would happen was, as the Allied bombers and planes were coming over Germany to bomb, these things were up higher and would come down and dive and strafe the aircraft below. And so we had an opportunity to play with this for about a good half hour or more. And this was before even the Americans had a rocket plane.
Yeah.
So his 2 5-year-olds playing with a rocket plane.
Amazing.
Now, I think what was happening was that plane was loaded onto a ship or barge, and there's a river that runs right by the airbase. So it was easy to unload that and bring it over, and there it was. That was probably in around September, October. And I believe that one of the reasons people say, how come extraterrestrials and UFOs fly over near military bases? They're looking at all this stuff. They're monitoring it. They want to know what's going on, what we're doing with it, etc. And the thing about this is, it's conceivable that ETs were already present, but we weren't aware of it. I wasn't aware of it. And they knew that that plane was there. And they may have known that there were a couple of young kids playing with it. Now, in around, I think it was November, my mother and I went out for a walk along the main road of the airbase. And we were, my younger brother, who was just 1 year old, we were pushing him in the baby carriage. And as we're walking along, there's some military buildings, maybe I think 2 or 3 stories high, nothing very significant. And I saw what I thought was a Mexican sombrero hat fluttering over one of the buildings. It just sort of came from one direction and went over the building. And there it was. And I said to my mother, "What's that?" And she looked at it, and she really didn't know what it was. And she says, "I think it's an airplane." And it was hovering, and it tilted a little bit. A typical saucer, dark underneath, had a dome or cupola on the top, and brighter on the top than it was on the bottom. So that was an intriguing aspect of it. And if you've seen any of the photographs, I think it's of Passaic, New Jersey UFO, it looked very much like that. And that picture was taken roughly in the same time period. So it could have been the same craft or one similar to it. Anyways, so upon her saying, "Well, I don't know what it is," it took off.
Yeah.
So my conclusion was some airplanes are disc-shaped as well as conventional. I would say within a day or two of that sighting, I had little ETs come into my bedroom.
No, really?
So they found me. I wasn't looking for them. And they came through the wall behind the bedroom door. And I think something woke me up, and I looked at this, and I saw these little beings, and I thought they're like Casper the Ghost. And I think everybody knows who
Yeah.
Casper the Ghost is.
Yeah.
And the bright and luminous, and but they also seem to resemble little men. So I called out to my mother, and she came in. She said, "What's going on?" I said, "There's ghosts or little men behind the door." And she just thinks I'm having a bad nightmare, a bad dream,
Yeah.
right? And I said, "Well, go take a look." And she looks, and there's nothing there. She says, "You're just having a bad dream." So she calms me down. She leaves. Boom, they're coming back again. Well, now I'm not dreaming. I'm seeing these things, and I've woken up the whole house now because I'm calling out and screaming, and she's I think a little bit upset and annoyed with me because she's trying to sleep, and she comes in and I said, "Now, what's happening?" And she said, "I said they're back." And the interesting thing, I reported this to Fortean Times. The story is in Fortean Times, and I think it was in their February issue back a number of years ago, probably 6 or 8 years ago. But anyways, long story short, she looks, she calms me down. She spends about 10 minutes trying to settle me,
Yeah.
and she said, "You're just having a bad dream, and Christmas isn't too far away. I want you to think about Christmas and the Christmas tree lit up and the presents you're gonna get." She said, "Let that be your dream, right?" So I thought, okay, and she left the room. Her and my father's room was right next to ours, so it was a small building, small home. So I look back at the wall and I don't see anything, and I thought I must be dreaming. I must be dreaming. And then as I thought that, there they were again.
Oh.
3 times they came in. This time they're walking around the edge of the bed up to where I'm sleeping.
How many
So,
were there?
pardon me?
How many were there?
There were 3 of them. Let me describe them. They had arms, legs, and a head and a body. They looked very bright and luminous, as if they were somehow illumined in some manner, but self-illumined. Their eyes were like humans, but larger. They didn't have any black coverings over it. Nobody was reporting little beings at that time. And in fact, nobody even knew that there were so-called grays. And I don't use the term gray because it's really a racist appellation.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
like, labeling Chinese chinks and
Yeah.
all the rest of it. And so when you go down that road, you're putting our anthropocentric racism onto something that we don't understand.
Yeah.
So to me, it was like Casper the Ghost. And they're coming around the bed, and I pull the covers over my head, thinking if I can't see them, they can't see me. They're not there. And I guess I fell asleep, but there was something in the back of my mind that said that the covers came off me. Now, I have no memory after that point. I woke up the following morning, and my brother was teasing me. He said, he just had a dream. I didn't see anything. So that's what my mother was saying. It was just a bad dream. But children tend to, if they have something traumatic happen, they'll find a way to express it. And I started to express it by drawing pictures of stars and planets and rockets and stuff like that. Where's that coming from? I wasn't even aware of what a rocket was or anything else. And something in the back of my subconscious was trying to reveal itself and explain what I had encountered.
Yeah.
Did I have an off-planet experience? I don't know. Did I get a download of information? I don't know. But one of the things I will say is, from that point on, I knew there was life in the universe.
Right.
So now, many years later, of course, I started to figure out how it was that they came through the wall. And that's based on their technology, which is interdimensional. And one of the interesting things about this is that right now in the States, there's a big movement happening about disclosure.
Yeah.
And getting the government to know certain things, and they're calling in various witnesses from the military, et cetera,
Yeah.
and that they have had the drone experience over the eastern coast of New York, New Jersey,
Yeah.
etc., and people
Yeah.
didn't know what it was. And then on the west coast, you had the Tic Tacs flying over the military naval ships off of Catalina
Yeah.
Island, and
Yeah.
so they're all man-made. This is not extraterrestrial, and they make a big deal about this. And I tell people, look, if you want to dig into this and you want to find out the truth, you've got to research it. I can tell you what I know, but I say to people, don't just take my word. Prove me wrong or prove me right. I don't care which, but find out for yourself. And because all of this stuff that's going on, and with David Grush and Luis Alejandro coming out saying, this stuff is real, etc. But neither men have seen anything.
No.
Neither men have seen the bodies.
Yeah.
I've seen the UFOs. I've seen the ET beings, and I've had other encounters years later from my own research. And one of the things is they won't. In my case, they've never presented themselves physically. The only time I saw them physically was when I was 5 years old. Now, if they were moving through the wall, that's a part of their interdimensional, transdimensional technology, which I think I stated. And it doesn't mean that they are interdimensional. In fact, now people are tossing out terms like transdimensional, ultra-dimensional, metadimensional, all of these terminologies. And
Yeah.
the thing is, it's muddying the waters, and it's confusing anybody who's trying to do serious research.
Yeah.
So like yourself and like many researchers, if you get caught up in that nomenclature, where now instead of UFOs, they're UAPs, and or they're Tic Tacs or whatever you want to call them. Quite frankly, I know what they are. There's three terminologies that I will use: UFO, which means they're truly an unidentified flying object, and in which case you could substitute UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon, but it's unidentified. You cannot identify it. The other two is ARV, alien reproduction vehicles, which means they're man-made. A lot of those are flying around. And the other ones are ETVs, extraterrestrial vehicles. And most people do not know the difference. And even when you have an ET encounter, you may not even know the difference between a man-made biological life form, which is a programmable life form, PLF, and they will pilot these ARVs. And the interesting thing is that the PLFs are either a hybridization and clone being that we've created, or it is a robotic, or it's a cybernetic organism that has both material and electronics and mechanics in it. And the problem is that most people will see these beings. Normally, they're considered the short little grays, which is what is sort of indicated here, right?
Yeah.
This is closer to what I've seen, but it's not what I would call a gray, and it's more like the photos I think I sent you of what came through my bedroom wall. I don't know if you want to show that or not, but and the thing is, they don't look mean or malevolent or angry like you see a lot of these photos being bantered about on books and movies and documentaries. And it's always, if you talk about an ET, you're talking about the little gray. And it's not. There are many, many different types coming to this planet. And the grays are only one form. Are some of them genuine extraterrestrials? Yes. Are some of them a robotic cybernetic organism? Yes. Are they man-made? Yes. Are they also extraterrestrial? Possibly. The problem here, though, and this is the thing that begs the question: if you're having a physical contact with an ET, how do you deal with the cross-contamination of bacteria or cross-transmission of bacteria and viruses and diseases?
Yeah.
We just went through a pandemic. And a pandemic, that was allegedly started in China somewhere and started to spread across the globe, and it killed off millions of people.
Yeah.
It was severe, but it wasn't as severe as the influenza, the swine flu, or the Spanish flu that was going around. It
Yeah.
killed millions of people. So this was sort of a trumped up kind of pandemic, but that was a human problem that was it crossed between the animal into the human population.
Yeah.
So if you have a physical contact with a truly alien species, how do you deal up with that problem? Nobody talks about that, but
Mm.
it's a real consideration that needs to be addressed. And if you consider one of the reports from Varginha, Brazil,
Yes.
where there were a craft that was downed by American weaponry, and the Americans said to the Brazilian government military, "You got something coming down, and it's roughly going to hit this area. You may
Mm.
want to send your men out to go and retrieve it."
Mm.
And that's when they found 6 or 7 of these little beings running around.
Yeah.
And one soldier handled the being, and within a
Marco
half a,
Shirazi.
pardon me?
I think his name was Marco Shirazi.
I believe so. And what happened within a half hour or a short period of time, he died
Yes.
because he physically handled the being. Now,
Yeah.
I actually have a photograph of that being, one of the beings being captured, and with a net. And apparently, according to the storyline, was they threw nets over these things and then put them into a box and nailed the box shut, and then put it on a truck and transported it to a military base or to a hospital or wherever. And but there's the case in point. When a person touches a being, we don't know what's going to trigger a
Yeah.
response. And people
Yeah.
will say, well, I had physical contact. They did examinations of me, a medical procedure. I was implanted with a device so they knew where I was, et cetera, et cetera. And again, if you do the research, you find out that, first of all, uh, you ask them this question and they say, well, somehow they took care of that. But that's not an answer. You can't assume something with ET beings. I have been in contact with different types of ET beings. I've actually had them in my home. I have a backyard camera, a security camera, and a front yard security camera. And I've caught things moving through the walls and moving around the backyard and coming back towards the house. And what it was an amorphous blob or ball of light
Yes. I've
moving
heard
around.
this, Terry.
Yeah,
I've heard this
yeah, yeah,
in one of my interviews
yeah.
with an
And
abductee.
yes, and I will say this. Look, if you had an experience, I wasn't there. I can't tell you what you experienced or whether it's truthful or whatever your mindset was.
Yeah.
It's based on the fact that you had a perception. That's your perception. I can give you my understanding of it and give you perhaps some alternative way of looking at it,
Yeah.
but it's not necessarily that my perception is the right one. It's your experience. It's like a doctor. A child has difficulty breathing, and Dr. Greer talks about this, where he would have a patient come in, and the child's not breathing, and so the only thing you can do is do a tracheotomy and open up the breathing passage, put a tube down there for them to breathe. But the child's turning blue up to that point. And the
Yeah.
parents who are watching this will probably think, oh my God, the doctor's a demon. He's cutting my kid up, right?
Yeah.
But in fact, it's saving the child.
Mm.
So the thing is, you have to understand that there are different ways of perceiving the same situation. The doctor has one way of looking at it. Parents will have another way. There may be some other third or fourth way of looking at all of this. The point here is that when I've had my contact, I've never had a physical contact. It's always been more of the holographic, sort of ethereal type of interaction. They can actually come up and touch you, but you won't see who's touching you. You can't physically return the touch. And you often, if you're in a group setting, you'll look to the person on either side to see if they're fooling around, and they're
Right.
not. They're sitting there as well. In fact, they may be experiencing a similar situation at that very moment. So all of that is roughly where I'm coming from. When I went to university, I took astronomy, physics, math, chemistry, all the sciences. And the reason why I did that was because I wanted to understand the phenomena a little better. And the astronomy is more math and physics, so I really got a load of that. But that's essentially how I got into all of this.
Terry, I have so many questions. I'm bursting. So,
Go ahead.
first of all, how does hard science manage to marry itself with the spiritual side of the phenomenon?
Oh, I love that question. I love that. Here's the thing. Scientists on their own, and maybe when they talk to each other, will come out and express this aspect of spirituality or divinity or something greater than themselves. And the famous physicist Edwin Schrodinger would say that there's only one soul in the universe and not pieces of soul. In other words, we are a creation of the divine, and the divine is within each of us. Now, the thing is that what I say to scientists at this point, and I've made some discoveries along the way when I started delving into this spiritual aspect, and that is science science is the acquisition of knowledge through discovery and invention. Okay. By formulation and mathematics, they can disprove something. They don't have all the answers, but it's really based on what they consider solid evidence, solid fact. Religion is the knowledge that is acquired through revelation and inspiration. So I'm inspired to do something, and it may be I want to build a better mousetrap, or I want to build a better piece of furniture, whatever. Or the revelation of that comes from a religion. And a lot of people say religion is a man-made organized thing to acquire money. And in some ways, I would agree with that. But it doesn't matter which religion you examine, whether it's Hinduism, Buddhism, Muslim, Jewish, Christian, even the Baha'i faith. The revelation or the words that are contained within it are based on spiritual precepts and laws and understanding. And it's got nothing to do so much with history or with science or whatever. If history is brought into, or if science is brought into, it's to explain a spiritual concept. I'll give you an example of this. In the Baha'i faith, and I'm a member of that faith, it says, know thou, Baha'u'llah states this, Baha'u'llah is the prophet for this day and age. He says, know thou that every fixed star, meaning stable star, hath its planets, and every planet hath its creatures, whose number no man can compute. All right? Now, I take this a little step further. And there's one more other quote. He says, verily, I say unto thee, the creation of God embraces other worlds besides this world, and other creatures besides this creature or these creatures. So what he's saying is that the universe is filled with life. And when you examine, say, the structure of our own solar system, astronomers and scientists would say, okay, you got the sun, we call it Sol, it's a stable sun. Mercury is too close to the sun, it's too hot, no life there. You look at Venus, there's clouds and sulfuric acid, and it's like a runaway greenhouse effect. and
Mm.
there can't be any life there. Earth is ideal. It's in the right place. It's got everything. We've got an ocean. We've got land animals, birds, aquatic animals, etc., insects, etc. This is a marvelous planet. The
Mm.
problem is right now we're screwing it up.
Yeah, we
We're
are.
killing it off. But
Yeah.
apart from that, it's an amazing planet. It is really the petri dish of our solar system. We can find all kinds of life forms, even extreme life forms on Earth, whether it lives under the ground, lives deep down in the ocean on the very bottom next to a volcanic vent, whether it is living in gases, whether it's living in the desert or in an Arctic environment. This is an amazing planet. Okay, you move out towards Mars. Mars may have been habitable at one time.
Mm.
And NASA is looking around and they said, well, that's probably water, but it's deep down under the surface. Okay, fine. And they just recently said we found what we believe to be a microbe that's fossilized. And so it looks like there may have been life on Mars. And then you move further out and you come to the asteroid belt, and then you come to Jupiter and all the other gaseous planets, right? And they have their moons, etc. And then way out in the solar system is Pluto, which has an elliptical orbit. And they don't even recognize, they've downgraded Pluto to a dwarf planet or even something else.
Mm.
Okay, here's what I found. It throws a monkey wrench into all of that thinking. Baha'u'llah says there's life on all the planets, regardless of what they look like, no matter how extreme their environments are. There's life there. And they are now considering, when I say they, NASA, that there may be some form of water and life on the southern polar area of Mercury. How they come to that conclusion, I don't know. But that's science. That's what they do. They investigate. Venus, based on what the Russian Venera spacecrafts crafts that have landed on it, have found that there is some kind of insect-like life on the surface. And but they've only spotted one, and it's debatable, and they don't know for sure what it is, and people say it's just a piece of rock or dirt or something. NASA has said that when you get above the atmosphere of Venus, which is the sulfuric environment, that the atmosphere becomes more Earth-like, where there's nitrogen and oxygen and other things up there. And they say it is possible for microbes to live in the atmosphere. So inadvertently or indirectly, they've basically two space agencies are confirming there's life on Venus, right?
Yeah.
You hear stories, though, that will say there's tall Venusians that live underground and they come to this planet, and there's stories and all that in the UFO literature about that. I'm still waiting for science to confirm one way or another.
Yeah.
Because that would beg the question that if there is a humanoid intelligent life form on Venus, it has to have evolved over millions of years and have adapted to that environment.
Yeah.
Then you come to the Earth. We know all about that. You move to Mars, and what I have found is 2 living life forms on it, maybe even 3. I have found something that looks like a bilby. A bilby is a rodent with a long snout and long ears, bit of a tail. Lives in northwestern Australia. That's the relationship. I've also found what looks like a mole, that digs in the ground. And when you look at the pictures, you can see that something is kicking up the dirt behind it as it's moving, and it's leaving tracks. This is what in the terrestrial aspect is the white marsupial mole, again in northwestern Australia. Now, this also begs the question, if we are seeing these and we can see the similarities to what's on Earth, are we really looking at what's on Mars, or is NASA playing a little game and saying, well, here's what we have found, but it's really in northwestern Australia, but they won't say that.
Mm.
People have reported seeing what looks like a squirrel-like or lemon-like rodent. And one of the places that you can find those is Baffin Island in the Arctic area of Canada.
Mm.
Okay, again, I'm trying to be rational about this. I'm not going to
Yeah.
jump to conclusions, but based on the fact that it may be on Mars, I've named these two creatures.
Uh-huh.
And I've named them based on what they are known here on Earth with the term Martis, meaning Martian, and then
Yeah.
my name at the end of it, Tibando being the discoverer of that.
Yeah.
So I've got two animals that I've named after myself. Nobody's done this. I posted it online. I've had a rebuff or anybody come back and say, what is this? You know, I don't know whether people out there are truly the kind of people who are inquisitive enough to do the research and question my findings or not. I've also found a fossilized skeleton or mummified skeleton of a tall Martian humanoid.
Wow.
And I've compared it with the cadavers of humans. I'll get hold of these photographs. And very similar. The only difference is the Martian humanoid could be 9 to 10 feet tall. Now, I'm not the only one that's found this. Somebody else has found a second one in a different location, and it looks like a complete skeleton. The one I found was a partial skeleton, rib cage and whatnot, and it's in an area where there's technology and other life forms. So this, in my estimation, was a red letter day for NASA, that they came across something that was not only has artificiality in there, but there's organic and what we call objects that are basically humanoid. And I posted this. If you go onto Facebook, CSETI Vancouver Facebook,
Yeah.
CSETI, you can
Yeah.
see those pictures. You got to scroll down. So there's some examples of what's on Mars. There are puddles of water, there's rivers of water, there's lakes of water, and you have polar caps, both north and south, that are a mixture of carbon dioxide and ice water.
Wow.
There's all kinds of things in our solar system. As you move out, NASA is looking at Enceladus and Europa as the moons of Jupiter, and that they think that under all of that ice, there's an ocean, and that ocean may also have life. So
Wow.
that's a genuine investigation. When you look at going further out, this Titan around Saturn that has lakes of methane and
Yeah.
nothing in the atmosphere. Creatures and plants can survive in methane of sorts. To what degree, we don't know, but we know that they can survive in it. Humans can't. We need special suits and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
When you move further out, and this is another discovery I've made on Pluto. Pluto is a planet that's smaller than our moon. It's about a third. I think it's either a half or a third the size of our moon. It's quite small.
Yeah.
It has an atmosphere. It has ice fields. It has 5 moons orbiting around it. But NASA and whoever in the Astronomical Society have said it's not a planet. Well, it's got all the markings of a planet as far as I'm concerned. I will beg, I would bow to what their current knowledge state is. But the New Horizon probe that went out and photographed Pluto for the first time and got amazing detail of the surface. There is in an area that's sort of a heart-shaped area of ice and some mountains, lines running through that icy area, tracks that run all over the place. And on some of those tracks, you see these dark blobs. Now, NASA says that this is nothing more than a dirty nitrogen that has bubbled up from the surface and has solidified, and due to winds and whatnot, has become dark, and then therefore it is dirty nitrogen. And when you zoom in on all of those things, you realize that they're organic. They're not inorganic. They're not methane or blobs of rock or whatever, because they're saying, like the sailing stones in Arizona in that desert that drift across the surface on their own because of high winds. And what happens is that the surface of the desert has some moisture, and it freezes over the night during certain times of the year, and they get strong winds that actually move the stones, leaving tracks. So they're saying that's the same thing on Pluto. The difference is, though, because when you do the science, if you got a probe 1,400 miles out photographing and it's picking up detail, the detail, like they can probably get it down to maybe so many meters across, let's say 50 meters across. That's a fair size. That's about 130 feet or whatever. But the thing is that these blobs are organic, and when you examine them and enlarge them, they look like gastropods. Gastropods being snails and slugs.
Do they?
They got little feelers or eye stems. Some of them have got shells on the back of it. When you compare that to what we have here on Earth, they're very, very similar. There are slugs that don't have shells. There are snails that do have shells. When you examine this, and even when you sort of do an automated color rendition from a black and white to color, you can see the clarity and the color of these shells.
Wow.
That creature is gigantic. It's bigger than anything we have in the solar system. It's bigger than a whale. It's like a small hill moving on the surface. That's where it's leaving these tracks. These tracks are somewhere between a half kilometer to a kilometer in width.
Wow.
Which means that the creature, if it's comparing it to the track that it leaves behind, is 2 to 3 times larger, making it at least 2 to 3 kilometers in size. And there's not just one or two, but there are many of these things in different locations moving on the
absolute
track.
Giants.
And now NASA has sort of come out and said, well, we've heard that there may be giant slugs on the surface. So here's our rendition of what we think is a giant slug. And of course, it looks nothing like a slug. I don't know what the heck they have drawn or got the computers to create, but it's not a slug.
It's not a slug.
It's something that looks alien and slug-like, but nothing more than that. When you compare the apples to oranges, the Plutonian gastropods to the terrestrial gastropods, they look virtually the same. And there's, as I said, there's more than just one of these creatures moving around, and they all have the little antennae. Okay, so these are the things that I'm picking up, and I'm not the first one to have noticed this. There have been other people who've come out and said, "I think we've got giant gastropods." NASA, I think, is so befuddled by this, they're going to have a hard time explaining it, because if they're saying there's only a microbe on Mars, how do you explain a gigantic organism?
It's a bit of a jump, isn't it? Yeah,
it is. Now, I believe that it's all to do with not only the distance of where they're located in the solar system, but more to do with the gravitational density of that planet. And Pluto has a low gravitational density compared to, say, the Moon or to Earth or even to Mars.
Yeah.
Therefore, giganticism is going to probably take place.
Yeah.
If you have those kinds of creatures, how are they surviving? What are they consuming? How do they adjust to the environment that's incredibly cold, like a couple hundred degrees Celsius. And
Mm.
it turns out when you examine the ones on Earth, they're very, very adaptable. If they can live down in the bottom of the ocean or in dirt or in a
Mm.
cave or in water or even uh, over the land. I mean, I had a slug in the backyard and I picked it up and looked at it, and I thought, you got a cousin on Pluto that's bigger than you, But
Yeah.
what this also gets you to think is maybe because our solar system was formed in one area, and that the constituents of its elements are similar,
Yeah.
that therefore we may expect to see similarities along the way.
Yeah.
And therefore, it may mean that based on gravitation and the core density of a planet and its rotation and all of that, uh, has an effect of producing a life form. But
Yeah.
again, all of this is proving what Baha'u'llah said, which is there's life on all planets if the star is stable. So NASA has not come out and said this. If you are one of these people who believe in the secret black space program, they've actually sent spacecraft to Mars to Pluto to investigate these life forms. That doesn't surprise me because we're pretty much hearing this from leaked sources who
Yeah.
say, you know, um, there is another space force out there and it's secret, and they have the ability to actually leave the solar system
Yes. I've got to
and
be
go to
honest
another
with you,
star.
Terry. Every time I watch Elon Musk put a rocket up, it looks like something from the steam age.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know, we should be developed way beyond rockets. And I
Well,
believe that there is a secret space force.
yeah, yeah, and it's been around for quite a while now. Now,
Mm.
I'm gonna take you down a different path here. During the Second World War, um, in fact, before the Second World War, there was a number of women who had very long hair, fairly attractive, and they had a society called the Viril Society, and they were basically channelers and mediums who would channel information. Now, we're all very wary of when we hear this term channeling and mediumship because we don't really
Yeah.
understand what it is.
Mm.
But they had the ability, under the leadership of Maria Orsic or Orsic, who
Mm.
was I think Austrian German,
Mm.
and she led the group, and they would get some form of information, and they would write it down. And as they wrote it down in German. And sometimes when they got the information, uh, they wrote it down, but they found that it wasn't in a language they understood. And they got hold of the Thule Society, which was made up of other people. And there were people there who had a background in archaeology and whatnot. And they brought these documents to them. They said, "We know what this is. This is Sumerian writing that you've written down. Very interesting, right?" Of course, then they did some investigations and whatnot, but they started to also get documentations of actual structures that they could put together and build. And Maria Orsic or Orstic wanted to create one of these crafts, which is what she was getting. So she was getting technical drawings, and she started to farm out the information and to get a couple of people to manufacture parts, because she had this idea of, let's create a craft and get it to fly, and let's go and visit where this message or messages were coming from. And
Mm.
they were receiving information from the Aldebaran star system, which is 68 light years away.
Mm.
Now, in all of this, you had scientists like uh, I think it's Schellberger, uh, um, Bellini. No, oh, I'm trying to think of his name. Um, Giuseppe Bellini. No, I'm not going to try. Um, but there was an EP and Methe and a number of different scientists that were also working on these things. And they actually built craft and they actually started to fly. Not very
Mm,
well because there was a lot of instability about them.
mm.
But this is when the Third Reich came along and said, we're going to amalgamate all of this information. And because there's something here and we need to exploit it. And on top of which, I think you and I were talking about this, the Magenta crash in
Yeah.
Italy. The German hierarchy went down and investigated and brought the craft back to Germany. Then Germany, that was in 1923. And then, because Maria Osick was getting this information around 1919, 1922, and was
Yeah.
already formulating all this stuff. And then they had the Bavarian crash in the Black Forest in 1936, I believe it was.
Yeah.
And so now they had two crash retrievals, and then the one in the Bavarian forest, the beings were still alive.
Oof.
And if I am correct, there is a photograph of one of these beings, and it looks like it's a small being. It, like in this picture here, it doesn't even quite look like this. It's a little bit different. It does have large eyes, but it's
Yeah.
unusual. Now, these beings may have helped the Third Reich at that time, whether they wanted to or not. I don't think they had a choice in the matter. So I think they assisted to a level of degree. And Germany started producing flying discs. They
Mm.
went through an evolutionary development where they had the real one-man craft,
Mm-hmm.
then two-man craft. Then they got into something much larger. Then they went to the Hanabu and the Hanabu 1 and 2 and 3. They had designs for the Hanabu 4, which was like a battleship flying disc. And it would have been something like 300 feet in diameter or larger.
Yeah.
The Hanabu 2 was quite large. I think it was about 75, nearly 75 feet in diameter. But, and I'm going to connect up the dots here. They they did employ some of the Hanabu in wartime combat. And there were reports of that. There are also reports of Foo Fighters, which were two different types. One
Yeah.
was sort of a turtle shell structure, disc shape, and it would interfere with the electronics of uh,
Yeah.
bombers coming over by the Allies. And another one was balloon-like, and it was designed to burst at a certain point and shoot shrapnel all over the place to interfere with the propeller system of the
Yes.
aircraft. So those were the Foo Fighters, and they were controlled by remote control. And the thing is that they were reported both in the European war theater as well as in the Pacific, but more in Europe. And both the Allies and the Axis powers, we weren't certain whose they belonged to, even though it was Germany's. Now,
Yeah.
in 1945, obviously Germany lost the war. America and Russia were trying to get into Berlin and other uh, uh, cities, and they were going after the technology. Uh, there's an interesting thing here. You had people called the monument men who went after the stolen gold and the artwork and all that stuff that was taken
Yeah.
from prisoners, the Jewish prisoners, and what have you, and to
Yeah.
bring it back and restore it to the rightful owners if they were still alive, or to their families, or put it in
Yeah.
a museum. Then you had something that isn't discussed too often, but it's called the T-Force. Have you heard of the T-Force?
I haven't, no.
No, it's the technology force.
Oh.
And one of your own countrymen, Ian Fleming, who wrote James Bond, was a
Yeah.
part of that T-Force.
Really?
Yes. And Canada was a part of that T-Force. And they were the ones that went in to investigate the nuclear reactors that the Germans were trying to produce. And in many ways, Canada has some of the best nuclear reactors on the planet. We've now
Right.
gone and miniaturized a lot of that. So you used to have
Yeah.
these big towers. Now they brought them down into the sizes of regular, like warehouse type buildings. That's how
Yeah.
small they've got. And my father actually worked at Chalk River, where one of these nuclear reactors was at, through the Air
Ah.
Force. My father also worked in a underground facility that's similar to the one in Cheyenne Mountain in
Yeah.
Colorado, and it was known as the Sage Site. And you had to
Ah.
go through the big, thick, heavy metal doors, and you drive in, and there's a building inside, and it's all built on giant springs. So that if there was a nuclear strike and it hit the mountain, the building still stands. Right.
Yeah.
I talked to the CEO of that place because they were posting stuff and how they decommissioned that underground facility based on the fact
Yeah.
that it had a lot of asbestos throughout the building. But
Yeah.
in one floor was uh, basically nothing but computers. That was the entire floor. So there was about
Oh, okay.
four or five levels in this building, and I've seen
Uh-huh.
models of this.
Uh-huh.
Anyways, long story short, my father was given certain responsibilities, so I think they acknowledged that. But he had an encounter where he was flying from Victoria, BC, to North Bay, Ontario, uh, but he landed at Toronto Moulton Air Base, which is now Pearson Air Base International,
Yeah.
and that's just outside of Toronto. When he was stepping off the plane, and I suspect it was a DC-3, which is like
Yeah.
a cargo passenger plane.
Yeah.
He's stepping off the plane, and he sees a hangar, and the hangar opens up. Now, this is, let's see, this would be about 1951. And he's stepping off the plane, and he sees in the hangar a disc-shaped craft, and it comes out of the hangar onto the tarmac, sits there, and shoots straight up into the air. And he's watching this, and it comes right back down and goes back into the hangar. Now, nobody was talking about, other than Roswell, a crash retrieval of a UFO. But
Yeah.
here's one that's in operational mode, and it's on a Canadian Air Force base.
Yeah.
Now, is this alien or is it German? I'm putting my bets on this that this was German technology. Why is that? Because earlier I said we had captured a Messerschmitt ME3 uh, uh, Comet rocket plane, which was German high technology.
Yeah.
Why would it not also be conceivable that we also obtained a craft of theirs? It's
Yeah.
interesting to note that Avro, in conjunction with Britain, worked on developing an advanced jet plane. It was an interceptor bomber known as the Avro Arrow, which it was
Mm.
built, and there was a number of them built, and some of them flew. But they were also building a what they call a hover car, or a hovering disc, and the
Yeah.
Americans were supporting this, and they gave them about $12 million to develop this, and there were instability problems. It was wobbling like this over the surface.
Yeah.
Now, what was interesting is it employed the Canada effect, which means that the surface was rounded on the edges, so that the airflow would go around and down.
Mm.
Whereas in Britain, when they developed the hovercraft, they put a rubber skirting around it to
That's right.
contain the air, so that it hovered and it could move all over the place.
Yeah.
And that has been traditional in Britain and in some other countries. That's how they built them. But in Canada, we stepped outside of that, and we wanted to get something that could hover without that kind of material around it. And they
Yeah.
said it was a failure because of the instability problem. But actually, I've done the research. I have some books on the subject, and it said that they solved the instability problem. Now, that was one type of craft, but they would and that was built in Moulton, Ontario. But they hadn't yet built that when my father saw his UFO.
So German.
It was probably German. Now in Georgetown, Moulton is east of Toronto. Georgetown is west of Toronto,
Yeah.
and that's where they were building a jet-powered flying disc, and they had the building set up, and they were testing out the jets and all the rest of it, and they had come up with different configurations. Whether or not they completed it, I don't know. There is one craft that was completed, and it looks like a spade shape, like a point and a delta shape with a curve on the back, and it had a central jet in the middle of it.
Huh.
And some people believe that the Roswell crash was this craft that actually flew and it crashed. Others say no, it was ET, and that's another story. But the point that I'm getting here is I believe my father was looking at a one-man craft that was of German configuration or design, which was the Vril. And actually, it was probably what they call the Vril Jager, meaning hunter. The Germans named a lot of their craft after the gods and what they could do and all that. So, and that's what I think he thought. Now, I'm supposition here and speculating. So people can toss this out if they want to. But I believe that he saw something he wasn't supposed to see. When he saw that, they must have questioned him about it. I asked him, this is funny. I came across this story because he had an old gun shell that he turned into a humidor for cigars and tobacco. And I opened it up and looked inside, and I saw this piece of paper. Right? And I said to him, and it had a little disc shape on it. I said, "What's this?" "Oh, you don't need to know about that. Put that back." You know, he wouldn't talk about it. And then I said, "Well, you know," I asked him again. I said, "What is a flying saucer?" And then he told me the story. He thinks he saw a flying saucer. I believe he did, but I don't know what he knew what he was looking at.
Yeah.
Like it's like my mother and I, when we saw the craft that we did, was it possibly a German craft or was it an extraterrestrial craft? I'm of the belief it was probably extraterrestrial because of the encounter that I had later. But what I think he saw was a German design. Now, Britain got some of those. America got the lion's share. They got 1,600 German scientists, Warner von Braun and Hermann
Operation Paperclip.
Yes, Operation Paperclip. And they still haven't come out and revealed all of that. They said, "Oh yeah, we're developing the rocket program," which is what they did, but they weren't telling you about the other programs they were working on.
Yeah.
And I know I'm going to put my neck on the block here and say that the famous Kelvin UFO that's being chased by a British Harrier jet was man-made.
Do you think?
Yes. And I'm going to give you the reasons why. The reason being is this. In its simplified form, if it looks like nuts and bolts, it's man-made. If it looks like a ball of plasma or a fluorescent type light, and it can kind of blink in, blink out like that, that's probably extraterrestrial. I've seen both types. But the thing is, when you examine, say, for instance, the German craft, you can see the plating and the rivets and all the rest of it, and how they put it together. It wasn't what they call a uniform construction, one piece, like it was stamped out, right?
Yeah, like a jelly mold.
That's right. And that's how you start to look at it. Even if it's got little knobbies and protrusions and antennae and whatever else. And I've now have re-examined a lot of photos that I've got and realized that what I'm looking at is a lot of man-made structure. Somewhere between the from the Second World War, but probably right up to around the late 50s and 60s, that there were ET craft flying around and that were solid, but they had the ability to move transdimensionally. Here's how you tell the difference. Now, I said that if it looks like nuts and bolts, it's man-made. If it looks like a ball of plasma, it's extraterrestrial. But now they have said that Lockheed Martin has produced craft like the Tic Tacs, and they have little antennae sometimes or structures, protuberances on them. Some of them don't have it. Some of them are ball shaped. They've gone to every imaginable configuration you can imagine, but they're all man-made. When you examine, for instance, the German technology, and I did a talk on German and American technology on flying saucers, the Glock was a prototype device. I've actually got a video that shows this thing moving around with chains on it in that hinge-like thing in Poland. You may have seen it. I've also got 2 videos showing a Haunebu 2 one flying over the tarmac, and another one moving up in the background of a city, coming up and going back down. So there's 2 structures, and they were taken probably during the Second World War. Allegedly, Germany didn't have that. And this has been a hush-hush thing for decades, and the Americans have not even admitted to it, but it's leaked out. And so the interesting thing about this is those were man-made structures. They, in this day and age, are now labeled as transmedium. They can fly through the air. They can go under the water. They can come out of the water and go up into space. Right? Transmedium. However, that's not true interdimensionality or transdimensionality. ET craft can do all of that. They can go into the water without splashing the water. It's just like one continuous medium going in, coming out. So there are underwater bases that ETs have, as well as human underwater bases, military bases. But ET craft do something that human craft don't. They can go right through solid matter.
Right.
I've seen that technology, and I'll explain how I've seen it. When I had the ETs come into my bedroom, they came right through the wall. That's interdimensional or transdimensional technology.
Right.
Like a ghost. I've seen craft that was coming down in Preston, Colorado, is sort of a big red globe. It came down, it hovered, and all of a sudden, from it, it splits off, and there's about 6 other craft. Where did those craft come from? They came from within that craft. Well, wait a minute. If they're all the same size, how is it possible they all fit inside each other? That's because they're out of resonance or frequency with each other. So that there's the main craft, and then each craft that is inside is at a different frequency. So they're nested in top of each other. It's like this. That's where they are, but it's all in the same craft. So when one craft leaves the planet or a star system comes to here, it's carrying all these other craft within it. This is why you hear stories where people have gone inside the craft and they said it's like looking in a huge football area. And the craft is only 30 feet in diameter. How is that possible? It's like the Doctor Who and the TARDIS.
The TARDIS,
Right? So it's the same. That's transdimensional technology. It's out of phase. It's out of sync with physical reality. And it's probably out of phase with the time concepts. Scientists will tell you, any really good scientist will tell you that there is no such thing as time and space. It's all energy, frequency, and resonance, right?
Right.
And that everything around us, the table, the books, whatever, that's all energy that has bonded together to form a matrix of physicality.
Right.
So when you start to understand all of that.
But what makes it do that, Terry? Do we drive that? Is that something that our consciousness makes happen? If I touch this laptop and it's solid, is that me making that happen? Is that me? Oh, it's difficult to explain.
Yeah, you have control over that. And because that's in this physical realm of existence, which we all share,
Yeah.
Even ETs share this existence as well. They're
Yeah.
physical beings. They're not this ultra-dimensional or interdimensional. However, all physical beings in the universe are also interdimensional in the sense that when you die or ascend, as you want to put it, on the death of the physical body,
Yeah.
you you transition to a spiritual form or an interdimensional form. But
Right.
the journey is a one-way journey. Okay, so
Yeah.
it's like looking at the electromagnetic spectrum and this small area in the middle, which is all the colors that we see with our eyes,
Yeah.
right? That's where we're living. But there's all this other stuff on the other side that's on invisible. So we got
Yeah.
on this side radio waves and infrared. On the other side, we got ultraviolet and gamma rays and X-rays and so on. And when we transition upon death, we now have this ability to move through all these other realities. And I'll call it realities or kingdoms, but they're not a physical place any longer, right?
Right.
It's all energy form. And so this is really what religion is about and what science has to discover. In fact, as I said, is that science is the acquisition of knowledge through invention and discovery, and religion is inspiration and revelation. But they're really one and the same thing. It's the same animal. And when scientists start to acknowledge this about religion, and when religion acknowledges this about science, we're going to enter into an amazing civilization where science and religion are one, and great breakthroughs will start to take place. But the problem is when you got old, outdated religions that still hang on to certain concepts of that's propagated, particularly in the Judaic and Christian beliefs, and even in some of the Muslim beliefs, it's holding back the rest of humanity.
Yeah.
If really we're all spiritual beings and God is within each of us, that there's a universe folded within each of us. Therefore, when I listen to what you say and to somebody else that's talking to me, I'm getting a little more information of the universe given to me. And it's up to me to try and make some sense out of it, right? That's my learning curve. So the thing is that when we understand the concepts that science and religion are really one and the same, then things like magic are possible. In fact, it was, I'm trying to think, Arthur C. Clarke, who said that any alien technology, if it was to reveal itself, would appear like magic. Yeah, that's exactly how it's coming across, right?
Yeah,
because we don't understand the science.
Yeah.
You know, and when we start to understand that science, for instance, the extraterrestrial beings that get here that are coming from other star systems, which are light years away, thousands of light years away, or even from another galaxy, which is millions of light years away. How are they getting here so quickly? Because they move between the space of space. In other words, between two atoms, there's a space. That's where they're traveling. That's where they're invisible. When you see something in the sky and it comes in like this and blinks out like that, what's happening is it bleeds in to this physical reality, and we see it with our eyes. But if we were to try and shoot at it, we're hitting nothing.
Yeah,
it's like a hologram.
Yeah, because we only understand space and time, don't we? Everything to us is distance and time, and we've got to stop looking at it in that way.
Yeah, we're it's deluding ourselves, and we need to start questioning what science is saying, because sometimes, unfortunately, we're living in a time period where there's so much disinformation. It's hard to tell factual from false.
Yeah,
you know, from what is truly real from that is deceptive. There's a deception program going on, and it's hitting every level of our a society in different ways, whether it's
Yeah.
archaeology, whether it's in learning at school, whether it's in science, whether it's religion. It's that we're being bombarded with false information, and then we start to make up things to scare people silly. We're using the old
Yeah.
German Nazi playbook to produce fear to get people on board with our agendas. When all that we
Yeah.
have to do, and this is what the Baha'is promote, is a one world uh, global civilization where
Mhm.
everyone benefits, not a certain select few, not the
That,
wealthy corporate elite.
and that's what's going on, isn't it, Terry? At the end of the day,
Yep.
the 1% of the elites are holding on to the power that they've got with their oil money, gas and oil, electric, all of that stuff runs world economies, doesn't it?
It does.
So if we suddenly have a population that now wakes up, realizes that, hang on a minute, for 80 years they've kept an alternative away from us, we've got problems.
Yes. I mean, it's like the war that's going on in, say, Russia and Ukraine, which is
Yeah.
nothing more than a land grab.
Yeah.
If you look at Israel and Syria, it's a land grab situation. If you look at the United States and Iran, and I was aware of this, that this was going to happen back in the 90s. They had plans.
Right.
Somebody leaked out some information that they wanted to
Right.
attack Iran. Well, now they've attacked Iran. And
Yeah.
the problem here is it's not about let's try and prevent them from having nuclear weapons, although that's legitimate. But
Yeah.
it's coming from a power that has nuclear weapons. And the
Yes.
real reason why they're doing it isn't because of that, it's because of the money that
Yeah.
control the oil. And the
Yeah.
fact is that they're trying to get everybody paying more money, and the only ones that are benefiting are the ones who are in the upper echelons of society, the wealthy
That's
corporate
right.
elite. And
That's right.
even when there's a war, the warmongers who provide the weapons, et cetera, are the ones benefiting. If there's a depression, they are benefiting because they know how to buy short and sell long.
Do
That's
you
what they
think
do.
we've been left behind, Terry? Do you
Yeah,
think we've been left behind?
because we're not paying attention. We're trusting. The point is,
Yeah.
you have to trust to a degree. But I'm saying, when you do your own research, you start to see things that you thought were solid, which are not solid in their complexities or the way that they're put together. It's like,
Yeah.
when you look at American governments, a lot of the people in power who represent the Congress, the Republicans, the Democrats, the Senate, these all come from wealthy families. They all
Yeah.
have some form of wealth behind them.
It's a club, isn't it?
It really is. It's no different than in Britain. It's no different than in Canada or any other
Yeah.
place. And if you're in a country that's militaristic, it's how much military control do you have?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the thing is, what we have to say as a population on this planet, and there's 8 billion of us, right?
Mm.
Maybe the wealthy corporate elite is only a couple 100 million.
Yeah.
Well, quite frankly, if we were to do a scenario of who would win that battle between 8 billion and 200 million, I'd give it to the billions of people, because
Yeah.
we would die out, but a lot more would remain behind, and we would
Yeah.
go with the 200 million. We have
Yeah.
to stop saying to people, people have to start saying, enough is enough. We don't like
Yeah.
the direction you're going. We want this direction, which benefits everybody. We want to make sure that everybody can afford food on their table. We want to make sure that they can have clothes on their back. We want to make sure they're educated. We wanted to make sure that they can work and produce something in benefit of society. We want to be able to say, I belong to a country. In this day and age, Baha'u'llah says the earth is but one country and mankind is citizens. We're really living as a global family on one planet. We have to get along. And if you want something that another nation has, do a trade deal. That's
Yeah.
what all you have to do. And if it's peaceful, you'll get what you want. You have to
Yeah.
go through the mechanics of it, but you'll get what you want. You don't have to go in there with war machines and take, which is
Yeah.
what.
And that's the problem we're seeing, isn't it?
Yeah. And, I thought we had gotten past this, but obviously,
Mm.
and I would have to blame our generation, at least my generation, because we have only learned from our parents and we thought that that's how things were done. And now
Yeah.
we're starting to become in tune and enlightened. People like yourself and my daughter are saying that there's other ways to do this. We don't
Yeah.
have to be at war. In fact, the
No.
ETs, they're saying, why are they here? They are explorers. They are people who want to know more about the universe and about life on other planets. I think that they're archaeologists in that sense, historians, researchers of some kind. And what they're seeing here is when we exploded the first atomic weapon, that drew them in like crazy. That was a
Oh,
bug
yeah.
drew. Red flags popped up all over the place. In fact,
Yeah.
I think it was one of your countrymen who used to write Flying Saucer Review who said that
Oh,
the
what's his name?
pardon me?
I know who you mean, but I can't
Yeah,
think of his name.
anyways, Gordon Crichton,
Yeah.
right? He said the reason why they're here is because we sent up this red flag with our nuclear weapons, and we're now threatened to have another war using nuclear weapons. And
Yeah.
they said that when you detonate an atomic device, nuclear or atomic, hydrogen, whatever, that it not only detonates physically, but it resonates throughout the other uh,
Yes.
dimensions. And there are
Yeah.
beings in those other dimensions, and they're being affected by that. So
Right.
naturally, you want to come and investigate what's going on. And we are now in a position where we now have space flight, we have atomic weapons, we have lasers, particle beam weapons, scalar wave weapons. And by
Yeah.
the way, scalar wave weapons were piggybacked off of radar and shot down the Roswell craft. That's how
Yeah.
they were brought down.
Yeah.
And the Germans and the Americans were working on scalar weapons back then. Um,
Yeah.
and then, so we're now an existential threat to the rest of the universe. And we're
Yeah.
targeting their craft to get the technology. And so far, if you want to call it successful, we've been successful at shooting down at least a couple of hundred craft over different places on the planet.
Yeah.
But ETs are getting fed up with this attitude that we have. And quite frankly, and Dr. Greer talks about this. He says that, he's heard it from various military sources that they believe that some of the communication they actually have had with ETs is they're very frustrated with humanity and they're reaching the end of their rope with humanity, which means that we have to start changing our ways on this planet.
Yeah.
And ETs have come here and they've examined and monitored, surveilled everything that we do, whether we're building dams, putting up buildings, creating roads. I mean, I know they hung around my house. I put out a patio, and my cameras caught two tiny disc-shaped things over the patio, looking at the patio, and then they
Really?
take off. Uh, Something coming through the wall and going outside and moving around.
Wow.
I've had little ETs in my bedroom that wanted to communicate with me after I was doing a CE5 field trip, and we'll get
Do
into
you know
that.
what?
But
I
hang on,
think.
let me finish this. And what happened was I saw this bright squarish light in my bedroom, which is
Yeah.
where the window is, and I thought it was light coming through from the blinds outside. It wasn't. It was something different. And I said to my wife, right as I was getting to bed, "Look at this. We got a light in the bedroom here." And it was square. And I believe it was some type of light, like a porthole.
Yeah.
If I had gotten out, I probably could have walked into it, but I didn't. I was just looking at it because I was trying to figure it out. She gets up in the middle of the night, closes the washroom, comes back in, and she sees a small light go underneath the bed.
Oh.
You know, they know where I live. they hang around every so
Okay.
often.
I'd like to ask you, I know that you've coordinated CE5 Vancouver for over 34 years. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I
And
I basically got started through Dr. Greer, and I was employing his CE5 protocols, and essentially it's how to make contact with extraterrestrials. And I actually had success before I met him, and I was doing this in 92, 93. We went through a stage like I had to attract people to what I was doing, and I got some people who came out of the woodwork, and we had a solid half a dozen people who came out on a regular basis, and that's when we started to solidify and started to get the equilibrium, as it were, within our group, where we started to trust each other, to talk to each other, and get us all on the same page. And then I would say around 1995, we started to get our first real event. I was being interviewed by, well, let me go back a little bit. In 94, I had one of Dr. Greer's partners, Dr. Joseph Burks, who came up from Los Angeles, and he came up to Vancouver to visit some people, but he spent a lot of time with me and not as much time as he should have with his friends. And he helped to put our CE5 together in a cohesive manner. So by 94, we were going out on a regular basis and having some outings. We weren't seeing a lot because we're trying to solidify. But by 95, the Discovery Channel was running around doing interviews of people across North America about UFOs and extraterrestrials. And it was called Alien Week. And on my Facebook site, CSETI Vancouver, I have that video. And one of the interesting things is that I was being interviewed by one individual. Behind him was a fella holding the camera, and I think there was a second cameraman, and then our own cameraman who on our group. And as I'm talking to this individual, I could see behind him, about a mile away, a white object suddenly pop over the top of a mountain ridge and hover above the ground near a ski chalet. And this was up on Grouse, not Grouse. I'm trying to think of the mountain. This Grouse Mountain in Cypress Mountain. It's a large ski area. We're in the parking lot. And so I see this object. In fact, when I looked at the video, there's two objects there. And people in my group saw this. And they were saying, look, do you see that over there? And I saw it as well. As I'm talking to this fella, and I'm thinking, do I go for credibility or do I tell him to turn around and point his camera? I should have said, turn around and point your camera over at the lights. This was during the daytime, before dusk. And as I thought to myself, I'm going for credibility, the objects got up and disappeared. So I thought, oh, next time I'm going to tell them to turn the camera around, if there was a next time, right?
Yeah.
And but we went through a demonstration of what they call close encounters of the fifth kind, CE5.
Yeah.
And this is the protocols that were developed by Dr. Greer and have since become a global phenomenon where many CE5 groups are out there trying to establish contact. And there's various degrees of success. It depends on how often you're doing it. A lot of it is based on meditation to get your mind into a higher sense of consciousness using various electronics and lights, beeps and tones. And as we were doing this, we could start to feel that there was a presence around us, that it wasn't just us doing this demonstration. And the cameras were on us and they're videotaping all of this. And then later, I think it was a few months later in the new year, because we did this in October, so it was in the new year that we saw the final production and the series Alien Week. And so what this proved was our CE5 protocols worked. That was the first time that we had that was definite. The following year, I went out and met up with Dr. Greer, and we had all kinds of events taking place, doing CE5, remote viewing, coherent thought sequencing. Now, let me explain all of this. Just like the Vril Society of Maria Orsic and her young women, who were mediums and channelers, what we were doing was something a little more similar, but a little more sophisticated. There's all types of kinds of remote viewing. There's coordinates remote viewing, where you get a set of coordinates and you have to figure out what's there, right? Dr. Greer said this is a lot easier than you realize, that anybody can do it because it's based on consciousness, right? And when you meditate, you get this into the state of altered but higher consciousness, where your awareness encompasses more than just your presence. It encompasses the room, or if you're out in a location, it encompasses that location, the city area, the planet, the solar system, etc., etc. You can move right out beyond the galaxy and see all the other galaxies. And if you do this enough time, you literally in your mind's eye can see that. I can see that. And anybody can do it because it's all consciousness related. The more you say to yourself, well, this is difficult, I can't do it, the more impediment there is to this. And there shouldn't be any impediment. When you are in this state of mind, you're seeing beyond space and time. You can see at any place in the universe at any time. So if you wanted to look into the past, you can see the past. If you want to look into the future, you can see the future. You can meet up with extraterrestrials. This is all well documented. So you're out in a group of like-minded people in a circle. We're sitting in camp chairs, and basically we're getting ourselves prepared for the evening's work, because it is work. And so we'll listen to some information from Dr. Greer that has been recorded, and I play this to the group. And then we listen to him do a meditation, and we all get ourselves comfortable. We close our eyes and we start to meditate, following along with what Dr. Greer says. And when you start to do this, he leads you along, and eventually you try to get this perception of seeing the Earth and its moon, the sun, the solar system, moving out beyond and seeing the galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy, and roughly where you're positioned, and then noticing the other galaxy. You can go as far out as you want to, or you can stay relatively close. ETs will pick up on this meditation, and if it's sincere and if it's appropriate and safe for them to do so, they will engage with you. Sometimes, as in Crestone, Colorado, back in 1996, the ETs were already there waiting for us. So you can see their craft up on the mountain, then then it comes down later in the evening and starts to off in the distance, or they may have a craft or two that you don't necessarily see, but you're getting interaction with something of high strangeness in the group. And it could be a sense of presence, compression of sound, a change in temperature. You can hear clicking noises. Sometimes it will interface with the electronics. So I have a magnetometer that will usually beep, and it has a light on it, and it will change from green to red, indicating there's something there. The ETs will come up and actually touch you. Now that's interesting, because you're sitting there and you could be, the next person is maybe 5-6 feet away. And I've even done this during COVID, so we're 10 feet away. And the ETs will come up and they'll start touching you on your hands and your face. And it feels like light raindrops or like insects landing on you. And sometimes because there's insect activity in the area, you're kind of brushing it off and
Yeah.
doing this, right? But in fact, it's later in the evening and the insects uh, activity has died down. And what's happening, and it's not raining. So what's
Mm.
touching it? And it's not one person experiencing that. It's many
It's a
people are
group.
experiencing it.
Yeah.
Sometimes uh, I was down with Greer in Dr. Greer down in Rio Rico, New Mexico, and I had an ET come up and poke me in the forehead. And I looked around and I thought I was sure that somebody else did this. Well, it was somebody else, but it wasn't human. It was ET that did that. They were trying to let me know they were there. And other people were experiencing that as well. We had 200 people in that group, and we were all seeing things flying around. There was a little bit of military activity at one point, and it disappeared. Actually, it was the night before. But the thing is, that's how ETs engage. Now, if you are experiencing that type of level of activity, it means that their craft has already landed, and you're actually inside the craft. That's because they're using interdimensional, transdimensional technology. Sometimes people will see lights moving around them. Sometimes people will take a photograph and there's an ET being right behind them. Or there could be some
I've
kind of
seen that.
wavy light or something. In other words, their presence is there. Now, the magnetometer for me, is a dead giveaway, because that's one way of me knowing they're there. It starts to beep. The interesting thing about this is when you turn it on, it goes beep, 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 indicating it's working.
Yeah.
When ETs show up, it could go beep, 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 like incessantly, right? Other times it may go beep, and you don't hear anything for about a minute, and then it goes beep. One time, I was talking to the group, getting ourselves set up, and the ETs were already there. And as I'm talking, I would hear beep, beep, beep 3 times in a sequence of 3 for everything that I was saying that was sort of like a basic truth. And so I would say, blah, 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 beep, 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 blah, 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 beep, beep, beep. And like, I don't have any control over that. That is interfacing with the electronics.
Yeah, because it shouldn't be doing that, should it?
It's not designed to do that, but that's what it does.
Yeah.
Now, if you've got a radar detector, let's say you got 2 radar detectors, one set for K-band or X-band and one set for Y-band. You can have both of those radar detectors, and one would go off in X and one would go off in Y, right? And so they're beeping. I was explaining something to my group. I had about 16 people out, and last time I had 10 people out, and I've had as many as 29 or 30 people out at one time. And so we get all manner of people coming out. Now, what's interesting is I was explaining to them that I believe that if they can interface with electronics, which they do, because they can interface with avionics and navigation systems on board a plane. They can interfere with radar and whatnot on board ships.
Weapon systems.
Exactly. Nuclear weapon launch codes, etc. I've had them interface with my computer. I came home one day and I was wanting to see what they could do, and there was I don't know if you remember the old Windows Vista, which had the green hill and the blue sky.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you run your cursor over, you see the little arrow, right? And off in the background, I saw a little black boomerang, and I thought, oh, I got 2 cursors, and I was trying to move it, and I couldn't move it, and I thought, well, where did that come from? And I couldn't. As much as I tried, it was there whenever I had the Windows Vista open, but it wasn't there when I was doing work. And each day I would come and go down to the computer, and I noticed that the little boomerang was moving across the screen, bit by bit. But I wouldn't see it moving, but it had moved. And at one point, after about a week, it had moved towards the center of the screen, And then when it got there, it finally disappeared. I believe that they were interfacing with the computer. So this got me thinking: if they can do that, they can do this with nuclear launch sites and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Computer is a piece of cake.
Mm.
So I said to the group, look on your cell phones to see if you're picking up any unusual messages, even if it's in writing you don't understand, even
Yeah.
if it's a picture you're not even familiar with. Okay, check your files, your whatever, your photographs, etc., and see if there's anything unusual there.
Mm.
Now, before I went out, I have a little device about the size of a cell phone, and it's a nuclear reactor detector. And what it is it picks up background radiation.
It's a must-have.
Pardon me?
I said it's a must-have.
Yeah, like all these little toys that are must have. So, so, anyways, I'm testing out my equipment before I go out. I do this procedure, so I've got things that work when I go out and that I know they're going to operate. Well, I'm looking at this detector at home, and I turn it on, and it seems to be malfunctioning, and I'm getting all kinds of static and gibberish, and I don't know what the heck I'm looking at. And I thought, oh no, it's finally packed up the ghost, and that's the end of this. And I thought, well, maybe I should charge it up and see if it needs a charging. So I charged it up, and that whatever was there disappeared. But now, when I think about what I said to the group, I think that the ETs were communicating through that device, that they were presenting something. And I wished at that time I had photographed it. So if I see this again, I'm going to take my cell phone and photograph that to see what's going on. Now, that's the electronic side of it. And it's fairly reliable to let us know that ETs are in the vicinity. Apart from that, we'll see all kinds of things flying over. We'll try to identify star clusters and star constellations, aircraft that goes over, meteorites, satellites. We see a lot of satellites. And we're looking for anything that doesn't conform, where it zigzags and moves all over the place, or if it flashes at us. And
Can I ask you about that, Terry?
Yeah.
I've been sitting in the backyard, and I love to look up at the night sky. And what started to happen is that when I'm looking into just black areas of the sky, I'm getting flashes. And sometimes it could be 3 or 4 times in the same place. Mm-hmm. Now, I didn't know whether that was space junk or whether that's actually something.
Yeah. It's a common phenomenon. Sometimes you see it, sometimes you don't. You also, this is why it's important that somebody has on their phone a satellite tracker, okay, that app, because you can track satellites and know exactly which satellite is going to be where at a certain time. But now there's like 10,000 or more or 50,000 pieces of junk flying around our planet. It's literally become a backyard garbage dump for things flying around. Some of it is legitimate satellites. Others are pieces of stuff that are broken away or whatever. But the interesting thing about that is that there are satellites called iridium satellites. And given at a certain time and position, they will suddenly flash based on where the sun is. Okay?
Yeah.
Because they have some kind of panel or mirror or whatever that flashes. Right. So if you know that based on the satellite tracker, that will tell you. You can also get aircraft trackers that will tell you which aircraft are in your area, which are flying over. Right?
Yeah.
Star trackers or whatever. So all of those things are important to know. When you go out, it's really good to have people designated to do certain functions so that they keep track of this while the others are meditating and some are looking up in the sky and some are providing security for the area. As Dr. Greer said, there should be a cross-fertilization of purpose where anybody can do anybody's job, but you don't want to have everybody doing the same job at the same time because
Right.
something may be missed. So
Mm.
it's hard to try and get that coordinated. But if you do that, you have a more uh, functioning team. And you have to understand that CE5 is work. And that when you go out, you're representing humanity. You're providing the best um, attitude and behavior to extraterrestrials who may be coming to visit us. We're saying to them, we're not all apes who just came out of the trees, right?
Right.
That a lot of us are intelligent and that we're peaceful and that we don't wish you harm and that
Mm.
we put out positivity of intention and friendship and love and peace, and we wish them to join us. And the protocol that is in place is they will come, and sometimes you won't see them, but they'll interact with us in some form or another. I actually had a situation, I put this out mentally, and I said, can you do something that is undeniably you? Okay. So I went out and I had a BC television crew come on to videotape us. And they went through the paces just like the Discovery Channel. And they
Mm.
photographed us and interviewed us and all the rest of it. And I had my equipment set up like strobe lights in one area. We go to an area that has these two large circular cement pad areas, which I call landing pad 1 and landing pad. And then there's a strip. What it is it's actually for the people who fly remote control model airplanes.
Yeah.
And they used to do go-kart racing on these tracks. Well, anyways,
Yeah.
I had the lights set up on one of these areas. And at the end of the interview, I was going over to pick up my lights, which I had already turned on.
Mm.
And I noticed one was missing. And I was looking all over, and I had a flashlight, and I couldn't see where it was. It should have been in a certain location. It wasn't there.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I'm not going to get myself overly worked up about this. I'll come back early in the morning. I'll walk to the same place. I'll see it because I obviously missed it. Well, as we're packing up and moving across the field to the cars, and one of the TV crew says to me, "What is that light over there?" And there was a light coming from some bushes, and it seemed to be flashing. And I go over there with a friend, and there's my light. It had moved about 200 feet away from where I
Ah.
placed it. And I thought to myself, what, did somebody move that? And threw it over there? And people said, we didn't even touch it. Weren't even close. And I thought to myself, okay, let's think rationally and logically. Perhaps an animal came across, like a raccoon or something, picked it up, ran
Yeah.
off with it, thinking it was some kind of food. And when it got to that, it dropped it because it realized it wasn't food, but it was
Yeah.
still flashing. So I picked it up, and I was trying to feel for saliva and dampness on it. There was nothing. It was bone dry. I was smelling it to see if there was any scent on it.
Yeah.
No scent. Yet it was still flashing. It was 1 foot away from a gully. Had it gone any further, I would not have seen it. I would have missed it
Right.
altogether. So this was proof to me that we had ETs in the area during the night. The interesting thing was that this was a physical manifestation of their ability, just as like they can come up and touch you on your hands and face, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I've had when I was talking about this nuclear reactor detector and the static and whatever I was getting on it, because that wasn't its proper function. When I was out in the field and as I was explaining this, and we were listening to the meditation led by Dr. Greer, that the cell phone would pause on the recording, and it paused 3 times, and I thought, oh, is the battery dead on this? And I looked at it, and it's still on. So I tapped the resume button, It continued playing. So we listened, and it stopped again. And then I tried it again. I did this 3 times. The ETs were interacting with that device. That proved
Oh,
that they could interact with a cell phone. I've seen them
yeah.
interact with uh, a, a tape recorder where it slows it down and you're listening to something and it goes blah 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 blah
Yeah.
blah 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 blah, like
Yeah.
like that. And so that's the kind of thing they can do. Um, when I hear stories of people having this physical interaction, I'm wondering why it is that they're getting the actual physical interaction. And our team, which has been out there for about 34 years, have never had that type of close encounter. But we're getting a close encounter of a different kind. So is this based on a certain mindset?
I
Or
think
is
it
this
might be.
something based on an event that perhaps is not genuinely ET? A lot of times people post things saying it was a short little grays that came and we went on board their craft and they told us this and told us that. Or otherwise it was the total blonde, white Nordics and all the rest of it. If you go back through the UFO history literature and you read some of the accounts of George Adamski and
Yeah.
other contactees, they talk about having contact with craft that landed in the desert and that off stepped a tall, blonde, good-looking Nordic type being
Uh-huh.
and blue-eyed and who claimed he was from Venus. And interestingly enough, the tall blonde seemed to be talking with a German accent.
Yeah.
Now,
Like the
I
Aryan race.
yes. Well, here's the thing. My daughter used to date a tall blonde German fella, and he spoke good English, but he had a German accent.
Yeah.
You can hear that. So the thing is, now I'm thinking this may have been a deception. Why was it? Because his craft looked like a Hanabu 2 spacecraft, a German designed spacecraft, minus
Right.
all the armaments that were in place, and that they had only revamped the interior or exterior of the craft, but they had
Yeah.
people who perhaps were German pilots or whoever speaking in a manner that sounded like they were offering information of being you need to be peaceful and stop nuclear weapons and all the rest of it, which is
Mm,
fine. That's a good
mm,
message. That's what we want to hear.
mm.
But there's other things that don't add up. Barney and Betty Hill, for instance, 1961, they were coming back from Quebec into New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Along the way, they see a large ship, a light, and all of a sudden it lands, and they're taken on board by little beings. One
Yep.
of the little beings wore a hat. Now, this was like the typical gray. Why would a little ET be wearing a hat? He was the only one in the group that wore this hat.
Mm.
Uh, Betty recounted seeing a star map, but
Yes.
in reality, when NASA sends a space probe out to another planet, they don't have star maps and whatnot. They have mathematical figures in right ascension declination and where the planets are in their orbit, and they put it in the computer, and the computer does the rest. So if she saw a star map, what was that star map for? She thought it was trade routes. So she saw this map and she drew it. And then another woman by the name of Marjorie Fish comes along and she makes a 3D map with beads of different colors, and the colors
Yes.
represented luminosity. And basically, she did this and turned the map all over in one side to another, and she saw what she thought was the same map. And she figured out that the little gray beings came from Zeta Reticuli.
Zeta Reticuli.
But
Yeah.
that's in the southern hemisphere. Okay, that's not something you can see in the northern hemisphere.
Hmm.
But people have looked at that map and said, "There's no way that you can determine that that's the star system." Um, Stanton Friedman, who's a physicist and very well known in the UFO community,
Yeah.
said this is nonsense. It doesn't make any sense. Astronomers have looked at it. I've looked at it, and again, we have projected our own perceptions onto what we think is the location. If we have an ET contact, we would never ask them where they're from unless they offer that to us. We won't say to them, what is the secret of your propulsion system? I'm not interested. If you tell me your propulsion system, I guarantee I'm going to have the military at my place knocking on my door wanting to know what the heck is going on and what did they tell you. So we have open-ended questions. If they actually physically land and come out of their spacecraft, we don't go rushing over to them. We don't put our hands all over the spacecraft. We don't grab them and give them a nice welcome to the planet Earth. We allow them to be the lead dancer in that relationship. If they come over and want to touch us, we would ask, is it appropriate for us to touch you? Right? Because they may not want to be touched. We would also ask them open-ended questions. Is there anything you can tell us about yourselves? Is there anything you want to know about us? Open-ended, right? If we start to ask specific questions, it's because they're asking specific questions or would allow specific questions to be answered. So the thing is that that's part of the CE5 protocol. Why I'm not on this, I've actually introduced 2 new CE close encounter groups, CE6, CE7. I know that there's somebody out there who's put up to CE12, but they can't be proven. CE6 and the CE7 can be, because it has been demonstrated. First of all, a CE6 is you either have to be an astronaut, cosmonaut, or a tachyonaut, which is from US, Russia, China. And if you're out orbiting the Earth, or if you're on the moon, and you encounter a spacecraft, then there's a degree of the CE6, just like there is a degree of the CEs on Earth, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Greer was the one who initiated the CE5. CE6 is you see a UFO or you have an encounter with an extraterrestrial being. And such an event did occur. And I know the story behind that a tall, 9-foot tall being came on board one of the space shuttles and was interacting or communicating with the astronauts, and actually went inside the space shuttle, but it was very cramped because he was about 9 feet tall and he was wearing a spacesuit. And it was picked up on one of the monitors on Earth and NASA by the space operations officer of that time. And consequently, he revealed that information and got fired from the job. This brings up the questions of NDA, non-disclosure agreements, which basically, if you're in these types of branches of the government, which is military, you have NDAs based on what your job is, or you may even have it within the government, or you may even have it within NASA. And, I have a NASA friend who's a doctor who basically I've asked her questions about what does she know about life on Pluto, and she said, I can neither confirm nor deny that there's life there. But she said, I know one of the astronauts, Buzz Aldrin, and he will confirm that there is life on Mars, which confirms my discoveries. Now, the thing about it is there is this information within NASA, but it's not revealed to the public. And there's all kinds of, I think, different branches within NASA. It's supposed to be a public National Aeronautics Space Administration. It was known as the National Aeronautics Commission, something or other. I keep forgetting exactly, committee or something. But anyways, the point that I'm getting here is that insider information is available, but part of this is what they're trying to do now, which is to get anybody who has revealed information based on this non-disclosure agreement to reveal what they have without any penalty whatsoever. that they won't lose their pensions, they won't lose their
Yeah.
jobs, etc. The doctor from NASA that I know has said that revealing any of this information, I could lose my pension and my job.
Wow.
So, and I know something about Buzz Aldrin, about something that he's written, and I want to ask him, but I was told by this person, don't ask him, because he's still alive, he's still well recognized, and he could lose whatever pension he's getting from NASA at this point. So I have to take a hands-off approach from this and have to accept what it is until such time the laws in the U.S. change where they can allow for information to be given.
Yeah.
Now, Dr. Greer has said that such NDAs, if done within a certain group, are themselves illegal because they're not beholden to the government or to anything else, but to within their own group, which means that the NDA is spurless at best. And this is just a way of controlling the people and whatever is going on, because they're in very compartmental
yes
facilities and positions.
Yeah,
so
very
this is
much
part
so.
of the problem. And we have to get past this. But the whole point I'm getting at here is, first of all, there is life in the universe. There are organizations like NASA that know about it, and the military, and it's like, as I said earlier, David Grush and Luis Elizondo and Chris Mellon and a few others who come out and said, here's the situation. Yes, we're being visited. Yes, there's a reversal of engineering of the technology, and yes, we have NHIs, non-human intelligence, or ETs, and the whole thing though is that it's all classified. David Grush said that I can tell you about it, but it has to be in a SCIF, a secret compartmentalized information facility, right? And well, wait a minute, you're supposed to be coming out and revealing that, not hiding it. Why do you have to sit behind closed doors, right? And because he obviously has now clearance to give all this other vital information if he's genuinely got it. But you have to understand that Luis Elizondo and David Grush, and apart from I think it's Robert Ryan or David Ryan or David Ferver, that was it. The pilots saw UFOs from
David Fravor.
Pardon me?
David Fravor.
Fravor, right.
Yeah.
And they saw it, but the others have not seen anything. They were interviewed, at least David Grush was, by Dr. Greer a year before he went public. And he said, I didn't use him as one of my witnesses because he's a second-hand witness. I only deal with first-hand witnesses, those who were directly involved with the experience of a contact, a UFO, etc. Right?
I think he's seen photos, hasn't he, of crashed craft,
and so he's relaying information based to him, told to him, based on what he was told, right?
Yeah.
So that means that you're going to get a bit of an interpretation, but you're not really getting what is genuine. And he's painting all of these people are painting this as a negative narrative, that there's something hostile and malevolent. I've never, ever, in my 70 years of experience with various ETs, ever have a negative experience. It's always been positive.
I was going to ask you that question, actually, after 73 years of sightings and encounters, about what do you think they want from humanity?
For us to grow up.
Also, I've got to say that the amount of interviews I've done with abductees, it comes across in varying experiences. Some of it not too bad, but some of it, if it was happening to me or you and it was done by another human being, there'd be multiple felonies. home invasion, kidnap,
Yeah.
sexual practices, taking eggs, taking semen. And I've got to say, I've done interview after interview. Some of these people were very, very credible.
Mm-hmm.
Even Lieutenant Colonel John Blitch, I interviewed him, and looking into that man's eyes while I'm interviewing him and while he's telling me what's happened to him, I believe him.
Yeah.
I believe him. Now, he's not saying to me that he felt that these beings were bad. He's not saying that. And what he is saying is that ultimately he believes that he came out of the experience stronger.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Stronger for having the experience.
Yeah.
My only concern is that there's not a touch of Stockholm syndrome going on.
Mm-hmm.
I could be completely wrong.
Yeah.
I'm learning as I go,
Yeah, I've had a couple of young ladies who have told me they had been abducted, and one said that she had a baby, a fetus that was taken from her, and the doctors were mystified. And that I listened to her, and I tried not to prejudge her. I didn't give her my explanation. I just listened, and if they asked me what do I think, I said, well, anything
I've just been
possible.
told that in an interview.
Yeah. And you hear the story, these kinds of stories all the time, where some woman has a baby floating around in space somewhere on board a spacecraft or whatever, or an alien hybrid child, whatever. And the thing is any of that possible? Yeah, there are things like that possible, but I would say humans are behind it, not ETs. ETs, if they want to know anything about us, they can go to any medical school, they can go to any cemetery and look up bodies and what have you. I hear about medical cures, for instance, and it seems to be an actual event that happens to various people. I've got all kinds of complications medically, but I'm still a reasonably sound mind and body to a degree. Of all the 70 years I've been at, no ET has ever healed me. Am I chopped liver? I've never been abducted. Am I the worst case to bother with? Well, why are they interacting with me? Why are they interacting with the group of people I'm with? In other words, something else is going on that doesn't make sense. And people say it's based on your mental attitude and behavior, and whether you're positive or negative. If you're negative, you get a negative experience. If you're positive, you get a positive experience. I'm not buying into that. I'm saying, if you're a decent person, which most of us are, you're going to probably get whatever experience is happening. However, it's trying to sort out the needle out of the straw. There's a lot of straw out there and very few needles. And I can only base it on what I've experienced and what other people in my presence have experienced. And we're still waiting for that physical contact. And I don't know if it will ever come, and that's up to the ETs, and I'm not going to pressure them to do that.
Can I say something controversial, Terry?
Sure.
Because I've got to play devil's advocate. I feel I owe it to the people that I've interviewed, because they spoke to me in confidence, and they were really sincere. We're saying that unless you're a first-hand witness, we don't want to know, right? Because we don't want anything second-hand. The people that I've spoken to over and over, and these are people from different walks of life, different countries, have all said the same things to me, that the greys come in straight through the wall or through the ceiling, wherever they want. The way that they move is not like us. It's fast. They're very fast. It's like a blink and they're gone. That they do make mistakes. So when they either bring a person back or if they're taking them, they can make a mistake, leave something out of place, give you a clue that they've been there, bump the bed and wake you up. In one case, that happened. and the guy, I've just done a 2-parter with him. He put the covers over his head, and the first thought he had was, "Oh, my feet." As soon as he thought that, a hand went round his ankle, and he went that way down the bed. Right, and he's been abducted since he was a child. He didn't find out. He knew there was one case that he knew of that he thought it was just a random event in his adult life, but it turns out it's been happening since he was a child. Also, his mother was being abducted, and I've spoke to several others where this goes down the family line. And they've all said, "Oh, negative."
Yep.
There's got to be something there, Terry.
And again, I tell people, look, you have these experiences, and whether you call it an abduction or an invitation to be on board the craft, or you're having medical procedures, etc. I mean, here's the thing. Give you two different accounts. Derek Sims, who was known as the alien hunter, would be interviewing people, and he used to work for the CIA, but he was interviewing alleged abductees. And one woman went to him and said, "Look, I'm getting ET on a regular basis. Sometimes they come in night after night, week after week, and it's driving me crazy, and they won't leave me alone." So he said to her, "Look, if you don't want this to happen, fight back. Just physically fight back." So she had one within a day or two of having that meeting, and she fought with all she had, and she reached out and was trying to scratch it and hit it, and she pulled the eye covering off of one of the ETs.
Yeah.
When she did that, she said she saw circuitry in the back of the eye.
Yeah.
It wasn't a genuine ET. It was a robotic or cybernetic organism. That's one account. Another account is a gentleman. This came out, I think, about the last year or two. And this was from Dr. Gear's Disclosure Witness 2.0 at Washington Press Club. And the witness said that the ET came in and was trying to abduct him. So he fought, and he kicked it in the side. And when he kicked it in the side, he knocked it to the ground, and it got back up, and it had a big gash in the side. And then the side was all this electronic circuitry. This is what they call a programmable life form. And the problem is most people don't know the difference. I posted this information on my Facebook site. And
can they pass through walls? And
there is an ability for some of them. Like, this is the problem right now. It's becoming harder and harder to know the difference between a genuine ET and a man-made ET created being. If a programmable, they can get them to do anything. They can fly in these ARDs, spacecraft, Tic Tacs, flying saucers, whatever, and they can go down and abduct people, or they can do cattle mutilations and all the rest of it. They can put all the implants in your body because somebody's at a computer and they're doing it. It's like a doctor who can do surgery and they're using a robotic arm to do the surgery. That's one way of doing things. Otherwise, they've got their hands in your body and they're doing whatever. So imagine doing this all by computer, right? And that's like you flying a drone, and the drones that are used to go off and bomb whatever. Okay, so when you start to understand that technology, it becomes less ET and more man-made in its ability. There's a person by the name of Martin Cannon who wrote a paper called The Controllers. It's a 60-page paper on mind control. And you read about it, and you realize that mind control is actually a very old concept, whether it's through influence or through direct contact or influence. And they have been trying to miniaturize circuitry since the 60s. And they had stuff the size of a grain of rice that they can put in your body, right? And
Yeah.
now it's more sophisticated. Roger Lear was a doctor who specialized in, I think, foot surgery or something. I can't remember what this, but he was a doctor and he took out implants and they were unusual, but he felt that they were man-made. And
Yeah.
the whole point behind this is, why would aliens use man-made technology in their abductions, right?
Yeah.
And an abduction, in my mind, is you don't come back from that event. You're gone,
Yeah.
you're missing, you're killed, whatever, that's it. You're not coming back. The kidnapping, you're usually held for ransom and for a purpose, in which case you are usually returned at some event. So what's really going on, if there's such things as abductions, is a misnomer. It's a kidnapping and a
It
return.
is?
Yes, that's what I think is happening. Because
Yeah,
people always say they return. They also talk about how they left their body, went through the ceiling and into the UFO.
Yes.
And okay, so the kind of technology that's being developed by humans is they can literally get your life force to leave its body as an astral form. Like you can do it naturally. I've experienced that. And so then you can experience whatever. So if you're like, when I'm remote viewing, I had a bilocation. That's a form of mental astral travel. Okay,
Yeah.
you think you're on board, but you're not on board that spacecraft.
Yeah.
And because physically you're still sitting in the chair or on the bed or wherever you are. So the thing is, I'm trying to get people to start asking the hard questions. You had this experience. This is what your perception. Now ask yourself the same question. Could it have been something else? What else could fit the same parameters of that abduction or that event? And chances are you're going to come up with a more human explanation. This is the use of Occam's razor. That whatever is the most likely answer is probably the right answer, right? When you eliminate all that risk. I also like to use Arthur Conan Doyle's The Science of Deduction, which is whatever is left over, no matter how improbable, is probably the right answer. So I use both of those and I play them off each other. And if they agree with each other, that's great. That means I'm onto something, right? So that's how I do my research. And I look for factual information. I don't look for speculation. I don't look for confabulation or wild theorizing and all the rest of it. Give me the facts. Give me the evidence. Let me determine what's what. You know, I'll either accept it or I won't, or I'll put it in the basket and look at it later and come back to it. When I wrote my books, and this is the thing I wanted to discuss right now, you can't see it, but they're up here. I wrote 6 textbooks, and the 6 textbooks are like university textbooks. My NASA doctor friend looked at this when she met me down in Dallas, Texas at a MUFON convention. I was giving a presentation then, and she said, I've seen a lot of these types of books. Yours are probably some of the best I've seen to date. She says, you've got it well structured, well organized. There are pictures, there's references, everything is referenced. You've got a massive index, you've got a massive the table of contents, and all the books are like that. When you pick up the first volume, it's 840 pages. It's daunting, and it's intimidating to those who think, I'll never get through this. But all the basic information that you want to know about ETs and extraterrestrial craft, including the stuff that's conventional and flies around, but seen in unusual circumstances, is all in that book, including actual photographs of ETs. Is in that. So,
well, I'll tell you what, we'll make sure we get links to all of those in the description so that my viewers can go and have a look. What's the series called?
It's called A Citizen's Disclosure on UFOs and ETI. Now, 6 volumes. I wrote it as one book. I had to break it up into 6 volumes because nobody's going to, print a book that thick. I mean, the first volume weighs 6.5 pounds. That gives you an idea. I mean, but the thing is, it is factual information. Photographs are referenced. any quotes or reference, whether it's from a magazine, a newspaper, another book, from a video. There are video links, or what I call bibliography.
Okay.
It's all in there. And the thing about this is that when you were to read into these books, uh, I take you down the rabbit hole. So the first volume gives you your basic understanding. Then I take you down the rabbit hole into the military industrial complex, the UFO organizations, to various UFO, well-known UFO researchers, into the German program of flying saucers, the Americans flying saucer program. I go into the flight of man from balloon stage, when it began, all the way up to the current time. I take you into a virtual tour of the planets and what you can expect to find on certain planets, including what life forms. In the last volume, I give a lot of quotes from various people, military people, government people from all over the world, scientists, etc., what they say about life. A lot of them are very positive about it, but they don't come out officially and say blah, blah, blah. And then I also say, how do we prepare ourselves for actual contact? Who's the best person to be representing us? And I tell people, what do you need to do as a person in order to get yourself ready for that type of contact? Because, right now we're seeing globally a lot of cultural groups and moving all over the place, coming into Europe and North America.
Yes.
And so, because the Europeans did it before, now everybody else is doing it. And part of this is preparing ourselves to know how to live as a global civilization. So we have to become global in our consciousness and in our everyday life. But we also have to start recognizing certain things, that science and religion are in harmony, that men and women are equal, that religion is one, that there is only one deity or creator of the universe, not many.
Yes.
Aliens did not make humans. One deity created everything. And we don't know what that is. That's a mystery. And the whole thing is, how do we get from there, using those, to finally having a relationship with an extraterrestrial? So that part of the CE5 aspect is we take these qualities out with us and present them in our behavior and our attitude and what we're doing.
I got you. For us to mature as a species.
And so one final thing, and that is, when we are, if you're interested in these books, you can only get them online. You have to go to a bookstore and see it on their computer, or you can order it from Amazon, which people in Britain have done. I noticed that there are people there who bought them. You go online, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, or your favorite bookstore should be able to have it in their computer system. Even in Canada, Indigo and Chapters. So there's 49,000 different places that you can go to find those books. And, they have a university price, so don't be shocked, but you're going to get quality information. That's what the NASA representative said to me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Wow, Terry, what a fantastic conversation.
Anytime you want to do it again, I'm here.
100%. I've only got like 4 questions in.
I'm sorry that I tend to gab. But
fine.
I'm trying to give everybody as much information as I can. And my advice to everybody: do your research, investigate the books I've written, and talk to other people. Find out what's out there.
Amen.
Don't accept emotional responses. Accept people who have a logical reasoning, even if it's different than yours, because you're going to learn something.
Yes. And that's why I asked the questions that I've asked you today. You've got 70 odd years of this experience.
Yeah.
And I've only been looking at it for around 5 or 6 years. So I've got to ask. It's important to ask the question and get the answers for everybody.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't even touched on, I've already scratched the surface on this, particularly in this interview.
I know. We'll come back and do it again. We'll have a part 2, Terry, if you're up for that.
Sure, I'm anytime. Yeah, I actually have another one of your fellow countrymen who wants to do an interview. We were supposed to do it before yours, but he's got caught up in other things. So we're trying to organize it for sometime this month. And then I have
Awesome.
a lady in Quebec who wants to do an interview as well, and we're going to
Yeah.
do something on a spiritual ET theme, whatever. So I don't know what direction it's going to go, but we'll find out.
I think it's important to get this stuff documented.
Yes, that's true. Any sighting,
is.
document it. If you do a remote view and you have an enlightening perception of something, write it down, because you never know. Sometimes your perceptions are looking into the future, and it may be that a couple of weeks, a couple of months, or even a couple of years later that it unfolds. And
Yeah.
that's what I have found. I've had a remote view of one of the moons of Saturn, Iapetus, and I saw it as a planet of lightness, a light and dark, and geometric and formed with a equatorial ridge running around it. And what was interesting was there was a tower on the moon, and it seemed to be telescopic. And I thought in my mind it was a communication tower. Well, 8 years later, the Cassini probe leaves NASA, goes to Saturn, photographs the different moons, as well as Iapetus. And what did they find on there? This light and dark shade, this equatorial ridge, and this tower on the southern hemisphere.
Wow.
I saw that 8 years before it happened.
I'm going to leave it on that. And that's our next podcast.
There you go. Alex.
Thank you, Terry.
Pleasure. I thank
Absolutely.
You for the time out.
I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you very much.